Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku inherited the powers of the Green Lantern ring. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was muted. That was the first thing Izuku Midoriya noticed as he stood on the rooftop, the wind whipping his green-black hair into his eyes. The vibrant colors of the city below, the flashing neon signs, the crimson of a hero's costume zipping through the concrete canyons, the cheerful yellow of a passing train, all seemed to have been desaturated, bled dry of their joy. All he could see was gray. The gray of the pavement, the gray of the gathering clouds, the gray of his future. His fingers were numb where they clutched the spiral-bound notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. The cover, once so full of promise, now felt like a cruel joke. The ink of his own frantic scrawling seemed to mock him. Inside, on a page now scorched and slightly damp from a villain's sludge and a hero's punch, were the shaky, hopeful lines of All Might's signature, a treasure acquired only an hour ago. A treasure that now felt like a tombstone. It's not wrong to dream. But you need to be realistic. The words echoed in his skull, not in All Might's booming, heroic baritone, but in a quiet, pitying tone that was so much worse. It was the sound of a door being gently, but firmly, closed and locked forever. All his life, he had been told no. No, you can't be a hero. No, you don't have a quirk. No, Deku, you're useless. But he had always held on to a single, defiant spark, fanned into a desperate flame by the televised image of All Might saving hundreds with a fearless laugh. If All Might believed in him, that would be enough. But All Might didn't. The symbol of peace, the pillar of his entire world, had looked at him with sad eyes and confirmed what everyone else already knew. Izuku Midoriya was a broken toy in a world of wondrous machines. His legs moved on autopilot, carrying him down the building's stairwell, past the spot where he'd had his terrifying encounter with the sludge villain, and out onto the street. He didn't register the path he was taking, his feet simply guiding him away from home, away from the inevitable, tearful look on his mother's face when he told her his dream was finally, officially, dead. He found himself walking along the perimeter of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It wasn't a park, not really. It was a graveyard. Years of illegal dumping had turned the once pristine coastline into a mountain range of forgotten things. Rusting cars were piled like fallen titans, their hollow shells groaning in the sea breeze. Discarded refrigerators and washing machines lay with their doors agape like screaming mouths. The entire place smelled of decay, salt, and failure. Just like me, a bitter voice in his head whispered. A pile of useless junk. He stumbled through an opening in the fence, his worn red sneakers crunching on broken glass and rusted metal. This was where his dream would die. He wouldn't just accept it, he would bury it. With a choked sob, he lifted Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. His magnum opus. His life's work. The physical manifestation of a decade of hope. He drew his arm back, intending to hurl it into the deepest, rustiest pile of trash he could find. Let it rot here with everything else that was broken and forgotten. His fingers trembled, refusing to release their grip. Tears blurred his vision, hot tracks carving paths through the grime on his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered to the uncaring junk. "I'm sorry, All Might. I'm sorry." He couldn't do it. Even now, some stupid, stubborn part of him refused to let go. His arm fell limp to his side, the notebook held slack in his grip. He sank to his knees in the dirty sand, the fight finally draining out of him, leaving only a hollow, aching emptiness. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful sight that brought him no comfort. This was it. The end of the story. Then the sky screamed. It wasn't a human sound, or a sound made by any machine he knew. It was a high-pitched, tearing shriek, like the fabric of reality itself was being ripped apart. Izuku looked up, his eyes widening in alarm. A brilliant green light, streaked with a sickly purple and trailing black smoke, was plummeting from the heavens. It was moving too fast to be a plane, too erratically to be a meteor. It was a falling star, a wounded emerald comet, and it was heading directly for the beach. Instinct, a force more powerful than his despair, took over. He scrambled backward, pulling himself behind the hulking chassis of a defunct cement mixer. The sound intensified into a deafening roar. The object hurtled over the seawall and slammed into the heart of the junkyard with a cataclysmic crash. The ground shook violently, throwing Izuku against the rusted metal. A shockwave of displaced air and sand blasted through the trash piles, sending a shower of debris flying. For a moment, the world was a chaotic whirlwind of noise, sand, and the deafening crunch of metal. Then silence. A profound, ringing silence broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves and the frantic, terrified thumping of his own heart. A thick column of black and green smoke billowed into the twilight sky. An eerie, emerald light pulsed from the center of the impact crater, casting long, dancing shadows across the junkscape. Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through him. His mind, the same analytical machine that catalogued hero quirks, began to spin. That wasn't a satellite. The trajectory was wrong. The energy signature. It's nothing I've ever seen. Is it a villain attack? A new technology? An alien? His first thought was to run. To get his phone, call the police, call the heroes. That was what a normal person would do. That was what a realistic person would do. But then, another thought, quieter but more insistent, pushed through the fear. What if someone is hurt? It was the question that had defined his life. It was the question that had sent him, quirkless and terrified, running toward the sludge villain to save Kaken. It was the stupid, heroic, undeniable core of his being. Despair was a heavy blanket, but the need to help was woven into his very soul. Slowly, cautiously, he rose from his hiding place. His legs felt like lead, but he forced them to move. One step, then another, picking his way through the now unstable piles of trash. The green glow grew stronger, the air becoming thick with the smell of ozone and something else, something strange and organic, like burnt sugar and cinnamon. He reached the edge of the crater. It was massive, 20 meters across. At its center, half buried in the sand and twisted metal, was the source of the light. It was a ship, or what was left of one. It wasn't made of riveted plates or welded steel. It was sleek, a single piece of what looked like obsidian, shaped like a smoothed-down fighter jet, but with curves and lines that seemed more grown than built. The entire front third of the craft was sheared away, revealing a mangled interior that pulsed with the sickly green light. The light flickered then dimmed. In the fading glow, Izuku saw movement inside. A hand, slender and three-fingered, pressed against the edge of the cockpit's broken canopy before sliding weakly away. Someone was hurt. The fear was still there, a frantic bird beating its wings against his ribs, but his resolve solidified. He slid down the sandy slope of the crater, his sneakers sinking into the loose ground. The ship hummed, a low, pained thrum that vibrated through the soles of his shoes. He reached the wreckage and peered inside. The interior was just as alien as the exterior. There were no buttons or levers, only smooth, glowing panels and a single, form-fitting chair. And slumped in that chair was a person. An alien. He was humanoid, but his skin was a deep, magenta color. His ears were pointed, and his face, though contorted in pain, held a strange, serene nobility. He was dressed in the tatters of a uniform, black in the center, with green shoulders and boots. On his chest was a symbol, a circle with two horizontal bars, glowing with the same green light that pulsed from the ship. A massive, grievous wound marred his torso, a jagged tear in both his uniform and the flesh beneath, cauterized at the edges by what looked like a purple energy burn. The alien's large, dark eyes fluttered open. They focused on Izuku, and for a moment, a flicker of alarm crossed his features. His lips parted, and a voice, raspy and weak, echoed not in the air, but directly inside Izuku's mind. It was a strange sensation, like a memory being spoken aloud. Local. The ship's telepathic translator is still functional. Good. Izuku flinched back, stumbling over a piece of debris. Why you can read my mind? He stammered aloud. Only the surface language centers. I am Aben, sir, Green Lantern of Sector 2814. The alien coughed, a racking, soundless spasm that made the green light around him flicker violently. And I am dying. Izuku's panic subsided, replaced by a wave of empathy. This being this Green Lantern was in agony. I can help. I can call for heroes. There's a recovery hero she could. No. There is no time. The weapon that struck me, its energy is like a poison. My ring is all that sustains me, and its power is nearly spent holding my body together. Al-Sir's gaze drifted down to his right hand. A simple, elegant green ring adorned his middle finger. It was the source of the most brilliant light, a miniature star of pure, concentrated emerald. The ring, it is the most powerful weapon in the universe. It is powered by will. It can create anything the user can imagine. For eons, it has been the sacred charge of the Green Lantern Corps, protectors of peace and justice under the guidance of the guardians of the universe on the planet Oe. Izuku's analytical mind, starved for so long, latched onto the information, categorizing it even in his shock. Green Lantern Corps? Guardians? A weapon powered by will? Is it a support item? A quirk from another planet? The implications are astronomical. My mission was to investigate a surge of fear energy in this sector. I was ambushed. My ship is destroyed. My life is forfeit. But the ring must not fall into the wrong hands. It must not be lost. It must be passed on. Al-Sir tried to lift his arm, a heroic effort that ended in a pained gasp. The ring chooses its successor. It must find one who is worthy. One with the ability to overcome great fear. Izuku stared, mesmerized. Overcome great fear? He was a creature made of fear. Fear of Kaken, fear of his future, fear of his own inadequacy. He was the least qualified person imaginable. With a final, pained grunt, Al-Sir forced his will into the ring. It pulsed brightly, then detached itself from his finger. The moment it left his skin, the supportive green energy holding him together vanished. The alien slumped further in his seat, the last of his strength gone. The ring floated in the air between them, spinning slowly. It was beautiful, a perfect band of polished green metal holding a universe of light. It drifted toward Izuku. He held his breath, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The ring stopped an inch from his face. It began to glow, its light intensifying, and a low hum filled the air. Izuku felt a strange sensation, as if he were being scanned, X-rayed not just physically, but spiritually. Images, memories, and emotions flashed through his mind's eye, seen not by him, but from him. A doctor's office. A 4-year-old Izuku pointing at a screen, his eyes wide. The doctor's clinical, detached voice. He has the extra joint in his pinky toe. He's quirkless. A playground. Katsuki Bakugo and his friends, their hands sparking with tiny explosions. You're just a useless Deku! The sting of a burn on his shoulder. The sting of tears in his eyes. His mother, her face wet with tears, pulling him into a hug. I'm so sorry, Izuku! I'm so sorry! The words he wanted to hear. You can still be a hero, left unspoken. Years of notes. Frantic scribbling. Analyzing quirks, memorizing hero stats, designing support gear. A desperate, intellectual pursuit of a dream he was told he couldn't have. An underpass just hours ago. The suffocating, foul sludge filling his lungs. All Might's thunderous arrival. A salvation. A rooftop. The weight of the world crushing him. Be realistic. The skin went deeper, past the pain, past the fear, past the decade of being told he was worthless. It found the core, the playground again. Bakugo had fallen from a log. Izuku, tears streaming down his face from an earlier insult, extending a trembling hand. Are you okay, Kaken? The sludge villain. Pro-heroes standing by, unable to act. Bakugo's eyes, pleading and terrified. Izuku's legs moving before his brain could stop them. A quirkless, useless boy charging a monster, his only weapon a school bag, driven by an insane, illogical, indomitable need to save someone. The ring's light flared, turning from a simple glow into a blinding, verdant sun. It saw the fear. It was a mountain, vast and imposing. But it also saw the will, a tiny, flickering flame that, time and time again, refused to be extinguished by the mountain's shadow. It saw a boy who lived in fear every single day, and every single day, found a way to take one more step forward. It wasn't the absence of fear the ring sought. It was the will to act in spite of it. A voice, ancient and vast, a chorus of a billion souls speaking as one, echoed in the center of his being. Izuku Midoriya of Earth! You possess the ability to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. The ring shot forward. Izuku flinched, but it didn't strike him. It slipped, with impossible gentleness, onto the middle finger of his right hand. It was a perfect fit. The moment the metal touched his skin, the world exploded. It wasn't a sound, it was a feeling. A torrent of raw, untamed energy surged up his arm, a river of starlight and willpower flooding every cell of his body. It didn't hurt. It felt like coming home, like a missing piece of his soul he never knew he had was finally clicking into place. The emptiness inside him was filled with a roaring, verdant fire. Knowledge poured into his mind, not in words, but in pure concepts, constructs, energy projection, flight, the ring's charge, the sacred duty. A second skin of emerald light burst from the ring, enveloping him. It wasn't cloth, it was solid, tangible light. It formed into a sleek black uniform that covered him from neck to toe, with a vibrant green on his shoulders, gloves, and boots. On his chest, the Green Lantern symbol blazed to life, a beacon of pure will. He felt strong. He felt possible. He looked down at his hand, at the glowing ring on his finger, then at the dying alien in the cockpit. Albin Sur's eyes were barely open, but they held a faint glimmer of peace. The ring has chosen well. It will teach you. Suddenly, in the distance, a sound shattered the awe-filled moment. A powerful explosion rocked the city, followed by the distant, panicked screams of civilians. A plume of black smoke, illuminated by fire, rose into the sky from the direction of a shopping district he knew well. Izuku's head snapped toward the chaos. His new, enhanced senses, fed by the ring, zoomed in on the scene. He could hear the panicked shouts, the crackle of flames. And he could hear one voice, muffled and desperate, a voice he would know anywhere. Kaken, the sludge villain. It must have escaped All Might. It had found a new victim. Izuku was frozen. The events of the last 10 minutes warred with a lifetime of conditioning. He was quirkless. He was useless. He was Deku. But the solid feel of the ring on his finger, the thrum of cosmic power in his veins, argued otherwise. Albin Sur saw the conflict in his eyes. With the very last of his strength, he offered a faint, bloodless smile. His final words echoed in Izuku's mind, a quiet, profound command. The ring will teach you. Now go. Hero. The light in Albin Sur's eyes faded to black. His body went still. He was gone. Izuku stood in the crater, the body of a fallen alien warrior before him, a universe of power on his finger, and the sounds of a friend in mortal danger echoing in his ears. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach. But for the first time in his life, it wasn't the only thing he felt. Beneath the fear, a new feeling was rising, a feeling he hadn't dared to experience in years. Hope. He looked at his glowing hand, clenching it into a fist. The light flared in response to his will. He looked toward the distant smoke, the symbol on his chest seeming to burn with purpose. He was no longer a bystander. He was no longer helpless. All Might had told him to be realistic. Albin Sur had told him to be a hero. For the first time, the choice felt real. And as he bent his knees, pouring his desperate, terrified, but unwavering will into the ring, he chose. He chose to be a hero. The silence in the crater was a heavy, sacred thing. It was the silence of a tomb, the final testament to a fallen warrior from a distant star. Izuku Midoriya stood over the still form of Albin Sur, the new, alien weight of the ring on his finger a stark contrast to the familiar, crushing weight of despair he'd carried only minutes before. The emerald light from his uniform painted the scene in a spectral glow, a private wake under the encroaching twilight. Grief, sharp and sudden, pricked at him for the stranger who had just changed his life, the being who had looked at him and seen not a quirkless failure, but a worthy successor. Hero. The word Albin Sur's last, echoed in his mind, not as a command, but as a statement of fact. A transfer of title. The distant boom of an explosion ripped through the solemnity like a physical blow. It was followed by a chorus of panicked screams that scraped at the edges of his awareness, a sound that his soul was genetically engineered to respond to. The smoke plume was thicker now, a dirty black smudge against the deepening purple of the sky. Kaken. The thought was a jolt of pure adrenaline. The sludge villain. It had to be. Izuku's own near-death experience flashed in his memory, the foul taste, the suffocating pressure, the chilling realization that he was being consumed. And now it was happening to his oldest friend, his fiercest rival, his most relentless bully. It didn't matter what Katsuki Bakugo was to him. Right now, he was a person in danger. He was a person who needed saving. The old Izuku would have been frozen in terror, his mind a whirlwind of helpless what-ifs. The new Izuku, however, felt a current of energy hum up his arm from the ring. Fear was still present, a cold serpent coiling in his gut, but it was no longer the only occupant. Beside it, a nascent, furious fire was kindling. The ring will teach you. He looked at his hand. The ring pulsed with a soft, expectant light. He needed to get to the shopping district, and he needed to get there now. Running wasn't fast enough. Flight. The concept bloomed in his mind, a piece of the data torrent Abin Sur had bequeathed him. The ring could manipulate gravitons, create a field of motive energy. All it required was will. Okay. Fly. Like All Might. He crouched, mimicking the hero's classic takeoff pose, and pushed his will into the ring. I want to fly. I want to leap into the air and soar toward the danger. The result was less of a majestic soar and more of a catastrophic, uncontrolled explosion. A geyser of green energy erupted from his feet, launching him skyward with the grace of a brick shot out of a cannon. He pinwheeled through the air with a startled yelp, the city lights below spinning into a nauseating blur. The junkyard, the sea, the distant city, it all swirled into a vertigo-inducing kaleidoscope. Too much. Too much will. His panicked brain screamed. It's not about wanting it hard, it's about control. Focus. A calm, synthesized voice, the ring's nascent intelligence, spoke in his mind, cutting through the panic. Willpower is the energy. Imagination is the tool. Define the parameters. Okay. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut for a second, forcing his analytical mind to take over. Don't just think fly. Think how. A platform. Stable. Beneath my feet. A simple disc. 2 meters in diameter, an inch thick. Solid light. Propel it forward. Not too fast. 20 meters per second. No, 30. He visualized it with the same desperate intensity he used to sketch hero costumes. A sleek, emerald disc materialized beneath his sneakers, solidifying his footing in midair. The wild tumbling stopped. He wobbled for a moment, like a toddler taking his first steps, then found his balance. He pushed, and the disc shot forward, leaving a faint green trail in its wake. It was jerky and uneven, but it was flight. He was flying. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in his chest, a sound of pure, unadulterated disbelief and joy. As he rocketed across the city, the ring continued its silent instruction. It wasn't a lecture. It was an infusion of pure data, a stream of knowledge that his brain, honed by years of obsessive study, greedily absorbed and processed. Construct integrity is proportional to the user's concentration and the clarity of the mental blueprint. So it's not just wanting a wall, I have to picture the wall. He mumbled to himself, the wind whipping the words away. The materials, the thickness, the density. A complex object would require more cognitive load, a constant drain on willpower. Energy is finite. The ring's charge is currently at 91%. Overexertion or creation of overly complex constructs without sufficient will can lead to premature power failure. A power gauge, of course. Like a video game, but the power source is me. My own determination. He looked at the glowing symbol on his chest. It wasn't a battery he could swap out. It was a reflection of his own spirit. If he gave up, if he despaired, the light would die. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. He crested a building and saw the scene in its full horror. It was exactly as he'd feared. The narrow street between the Kiyoshi Ward shopping mall and the Takoba Municipal Building was a war zone. Flames licked up the sides of storefronts, ignited by a series of powerful, uncontrolled explosions. A crowd of civilians was pushed back by a line of struggling pro-heroes. He recognized them instantly from his notebooks. Death Arms was trying to punch the villain, but his fist sank into the amorphous sludge with no effect. Kamui Woods was on the sidelines, his wooden limbs useless against a creature wreathed in fire. Backdraft was desperately trying to contain the spreading flames with water barriers, but every time he focused on the fire, the villain surged forward, and at the center of it all was the sludge villain, larger and more manic than before. It had formed a grotesque mockery of a body, and trapped within its gelatinous mass, from the chest up, was Katsuki Bakugo. Kaken was fighting. Of course he was. His hands were free, and he was blasting explosion after explosion, trying to tear himself loose. But the blasts were only making things worse, setting fire to the surrounding shops and preventing the other heroes from getting close. His face, usually a mask of arrogant fury, was pale with terror. His mouth was clear for a second, and he gasped for air, his eyes wide and pleading. Then the sludge surged, sealing over his nose and mouth again. He was suffocating. Something inside Izuku snapped. The careful analysis, the fear, the doubt, it all burned away, consumed by a singular, primal need. Save him. His flight disc dissolved as he dropped from the sky, landing with a soft thud on the pavement behind the police line. The crowd gasped at the sudden appearance of a new figure in a glowing green and black uniform. Hey! Kid! Get back! It's too dangerous! Death Arms shouted, sparing a glance at him. Izuku didn't hear him. He saw only Kaken's struggling form. He saw the pro-heroes, paralyzed by circumstance. He saw a problem that needed a solution. His mind, the hero-obsessed supercomputer, didn't think of a punch. It didn't think of an energy beam. It thought of the immediate, critical problem. Bakugo couldn't breathe, and the fire was preventing anyone from helping. He thrust his right hand forward, the ring flaring with intense green light. He didn't just will a blast of air. He pictured, with crystalline clarity, a tool designed for a specific purpose. He pictured every detail from the safety diagrams he'd memorized for a school project. A construct of pure, glowing green light sprang into existence in front of him. It wasn't a sword or a shield. It was a massive, industrial-grade CO2 fire extinguisher. It was perfect in its detail. The tank, the hose, the pressure gauge with the needle in the green, the conical nozzle, even the tiny, meticulously rendered safety instructions stenciled on the side in glowing emerald script. Target, Bakugo's face. Objective, clear airway and suppress flames, he thought, his will a surgeon's scalpel. The construct obeyed. With a deafening hiss of compressed light energy, it unleashed a massive, targeted cloud of freezing green mist. The blast slammed into the sludge villain. It wasn't a kinetic blow, it was a tactical one. The cloud of supercooled energy instantly smothered the flames around Bakugo's head and, more importantly, blasted the viscous sludge away from his nose and mouth. Bakugo let out a huge, ragged gasp, coughing and sputtering, but he was breathing. The first part of the problem was solved. The sludge villain shrieked, a gurgling, furious sound, and turned its attention to the newcomer. Another hero? I'll kill you! I'll kill you both! The heroes stared, dumbfounded. What the hell? Kamui Woods muttered, looking at the glowing fire extinguisher construct. Izuku didn't pause. His brain was on fire, flipping through the mental pages of his notebooks faster than he could have turned the physical copies. The villain is amorphous, kinetic attacks are ineffective. Its body is susceptible to being scattered but can reform. Containment and immobilization are key. The fire extinguisher construct dissolved. Defense first. Civilians are exposed to Kaken's stray blasts. He thought of the pro-hero Crust, whose shield quirk was legendary for its durability. Izuku thrust his left hand out to the side. A massive, interlocking wall of hexagonal green plates shimmered into existence between the fight and the crowd, absorbing the impact of a misfired explosion from Bakugo's flailing hands. Now restraint. The villain was lunging, its slimy tendrils reaching for him. Kamui Wood's lacquered chain prison is the model, but it's vulnerable to fire. My construct won't be. He swept his right hand forward. A series of thick, powerful branches, glowing with an inner light and looking more like polished jade than wood, erupted from the ground. They weren't clumsy tendrils. They were perfectly formed, interlocking limbs that wrapped around the sludge villain's base, pinning it to the asphalt. The villain roared, struggling against the glowing green branches. They held firm. "What is this quirk?" it gurgled. Izuku was panting, sweat beading on his forehead. The ring on his finger was dimming slightly. He could feel the strain, a dull headache building behind his eyes. It was like trying to solve a dozen complex math problems at once. He had the villain pinned, but its body was still fluid. He needed to solidify it. Cold. Extreme cold makes liquids more viscous, even solid. His mind didn't jump to Todoroki, whose existence was only a rumor to the public at this point, but to the basic principles of physics. He needed to freeze it. His right hand came up again. The air crackled. He visualized a high-pressure hose, like the ones used by firefighters, but instead of water, it was connected to a complex refrigeration unit, all rendered in shimmering green light. He took aim and fired. A beam of scintillating, azure-tinted green energy shot out, bathing the sludge villain in an aura of absolute zero. The liquid body began to seize up, turning sluggish and thick, parts of it frosting over into a brittle, semi-solid state. He was doing it. He, Deku, the quirkless, useless Deku, was single-handedly containing a villain that had stumped a team of pro-heroes. A wild, fierce grin, one he never felt before, stretched across his face. It was the grin of a hero. It was at that moment that All Might arrived. He landed with a ground-shaking thud a block away, his arrival announced by the collective gasp of the crowd. He had been shamed into action by his own cowardice, his earlier dismissal of the boy now a bitter pill in his throat. He had rushed here to right his wrong, to be the symbol he was supposed to be. He expected to find a disaster. He found a miracle. He saw the sludge villain, trapped and frozen. He saw the pro-heroes, standing by in a state of shock. And he saw the boy, the same frail, green-haired boy from the rooftop, now clad in an impossible suit of light, his hand outstretched, holding the powerful villain at bay with a weapon forged from pure imagination. All Might saw the intricate constructs, the remnants of the fire extinguisher, the crystalline shield protecting the innocent, the jade-like branches, the freezing beam. This wasn't a simple power. This was genius. This was artistry. A surge of something powerful and profound washed over All Might. It wasn't just inspiration. It was humility. He, the number one hero, had told this boy to give up, and the boy had responded by showing him, and the entire world, what a true hero was. He didn't wait for permission, All Might thought, a grin of his own, one of pure, unadulterated pride, spreading across his face. He acted because it was the right thing to do. Izuku's concentration wavered as he felt the titanic presence of his idol. His freezing construct flickered. The sludge villain, sensing the momentary weakness, gave a mighty heave, shattering some of the frozen sludge and cracking the branch-like restraints. "I am here!" All Might's voice boomed, less a statement and more a promise. He saw his opening, the one the boy had created for him. With the villain pinned and slowed, All Might charged forward, his fist cocked back. "Thank you, young man!" he roared, a message meant only for Izuku. "You did the hard part." He leapt into the air, his body a missile of justice. Detroit. Smash! His punch didn't just strike the villain. It was so powerful it changed the weather. The shockwave blasted the sludge villain into 1,000 harmless splatters, scattering it across the street. The air pressure shifted, and dark clouds overhead began to swirl and condense. A moment later, raindrops began to fall. The fight was over. Silence descended, broken only by the patter of the sudden rain. The green constructs, their purpose served, dissolved into motes of light and vanished. The uniform of light flickered and faded, leaving Izuku standing in his scorched and dirty school uniform, looking small and overwhelmed. The ring on his finger was now only a faint, pulsing green. The mental exhaustion hit him like a physical blow, and he staggered, his legs threatening to buckle. Then the noise began. The crowd erupted into cheers. The press, their senses back, swarmed forward, cameras flashing and microphones being thrust in his face. "Who are you? What's your hero name? That quirk? It's incredible! What is it? Are you a new sidekick? Who do you work for?" Izuku flinched back, completely overwhelmed. He had never been the center of attention for anything other than ridicule. This positive reinforcement was a foreign language. The pro-heroes pushed through the reporters. Death Arms clapped a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder, his expression one of pure awe. Kid, I don't know who you are, but you've got the makings of a true hero. Your quick thinking, your control, you saved us all. Kamui Woods nodded, his wooden mask unable to hide his astonishment. Your ability to create exactly what the situation called for, that level of versatility is unheard of. Thank you. They weren't scolding him. They were praising him. Bakugo was being attended to by paramedics, still coughing but safe. He glared over at Izuku, his expression a chaotic storm of confusion, fury, and a sliver of something that looked unnervingly like fear. Before Izuku could be completely swallowed by the media scrum, a large hand gently but firmly guided him away. He looked up into the smiling, non-hero form of a gaunt, skeletal Tashinori Yagi. Come with me, young man, All Might said, his voice quiet but firm. We need to talk. He led Izuku away from the chaos, into a quiet back alley slick with rain, far from the prying eyes and flashing cameras. The hero leaned against the wall, a trickle of blood escaping the corner of his mouth, which he wiped away with the back of his hand. He looked at Izuku, and the pity from the rooftop was gone. In its place was a look of profound respect and boundless curiosity. I believe I owe you an apology, All Might began, his voice heavy with sincerity. And a thank you? What you did back there, the courage, the ingenuity, it was everything a hero should be. Izuku's eyes welled up with tears. This was it. This was the validation he had yearned for his entire life. All Might. I was wrong, the hero continued, cutting him off gently. Utterly and completely wrong. I let the realities of my own life, my own injuries, cloud my judgment. I told you that you couldn't be a hero without a quirk. He gestured toward Izuku. And then you manifested one of the most incredible, versatile, and powerful quirks I have ever seen. But it didn't feel like a quirk. The way you used it, the light, it was something else entirely. All Might lean forward, his blue eyes, even in his weakened form, burning with an intensity that demanded the truth. Young man, I have seen a lot in this world, but I have never seen anything like that. Please, tell me everything. Izuku looked down at his right hand. The ring pulsed softly, a silent promise. He was exhausted. His head throbbed. His body ached. He felt like he could sleep for a week, but he looked up at his idol, the man who had crushed his dreams only to have them reborn in emerald light, and saw not a symbol, but a potential confidant. A mentor. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He had a story to tell, a story so impossible, so outlandish, that no one would ever believe it. But looking at the earnest, searching face of the number one hero, he knew he had to try. I don't have a quirk, Izuku began, his voice barely a whisper. You were right about that. He held up his hand, letting All Might see the simple green band on his finger. It wasn't me. It was the ring. He met All Might's gaze, the weight of the universe on his shoulders, and started to explain the impossible truth. It started with a spaceship. The back alley was an island of quiet and a city still humming with the aftershocks of the battle. Rain fell in a steady, cleansing drizzle, slicking the grimy brick walls and washing the last of the villain's sludge into the gutters. It was here, in the anonymous shadows between worlds, that Izuku Midoriya's life was being rewritten for the second time in less than an hour. All Might, or rather, the skeletal man who was All Might, leaned against the wall, the question hanging in the damp air between them, heavy with genuine curiosity. Tell me everything. Izuku swallowed hard, the simple green ring on his finger feeling as heavy as a planet. He looked from the ring to the face of his idol, a face so shockingly different, yet holding the same kind of earnest intensity in its deep-set eyes. He had to tell the truth. A man who could share a secret as world-shattering as his own deserved nothing less. I don't have a quirk, he began, his voice a half-whisper, afraid that saying it aloud would break the spell. What you said on the rooftop was true. I'm quirkless. I was born that way. He held up his right hand, the ring pulsing with a soft, gentle light, as if in agreement. This is something else. It's not from me. It's from him. Tashinori's brow furrowed. Him, the pilot, Izuku clarified, his mind racing to put the incredible events into a logical sequence, the way he would structure an analysis in his notebook. After I left you, I went to Dagoba Beach. I was upset. I was going to throw away my notebook. His voice cracked on the last word, the memory still raw. Then, something crashed. A ship from the sky. It was small, black, and badly damaged. He took a shaky breath, the scene replaying in his mind with perfect clarity. I went to help. Inside there was an alien. His name was Aben Sur. He was dying. He told me he was a Green Lantern, a protector of this sector of space. Sector 2814, he called it. Tashinori listened with rapt attention, his usual booming persona completely absent, replaced by a scholar's stillness. He didn't interrupt. He didn't scoff. He simply absorbed the words, his gaze fixed on the glowing ring. He said the ring was the most powerful weapon in the universe, powered by the user's willpower. And that his was failing. He had to find a successor. Someone with the ability to overcome great fear. Izuku looked down, a flush of shame and confusion coloring his cheeks. I don't know why it chose me. I'm always scared, perhaps, Tashinori said, his voice raspy but gentle. It is not the absence of fear that matters, but what you do when you are afraid. I saw what you did today, young man. Twice. You ran toward danger when every instinct must have been screaming at you to run away. That is not the action of a coward. The praise from his hero sent a warm jolt through Izuku, momentarily steadying his nerves. He continued. He died. Just as the ring chose me. It put all this information in my head. Concepts. Duties. About the Green Lantern Corps, and the Guardians of the Universe on a planet called Oi. He tapped his temple. It's all in here. It's too much, really. But the ring said it would teach me. His last word to me was... Hero. He finally finished, his explanation laid bare, feeling ridiculously exposed. He expected disbelief, perhaps even a gentle suggestion that he'd hit his head. An alien, a magic space ring, a galactic police force. It sounded like the plot of a pre-quirk comic book. Tashinori was silent for a long, heavy moment. He pushed himself off the wall, his tall, skeletal frame seeming to fold in on itself as he took a few paces, his hand stroking his chin. The rain pattered around them. A Green Lantern Corps. He mused, the words tasting strange in his mouth. Powered by will. A legacy passed from one user to the next. He stopped and looked at Izuku, and a strange, sad smile touched his lips. It sounds unbelievable. It sounds utterly insane. Izuku's heart sank. Of course. It was too much to ask. And yet, All Might continued, his eyes locking onto Izuku's. I believe you. Izuku's head snapped up. You do? I do, Tashinori affirmed. Because no quirk in existence works that way. A quirk is a biological function. It can be copied, it can be erased, it can be exhausted. What you described, what I saw you do, that was not biology. That was an external power, guided by an internal force. Your constructs weren't just powerful, they were intelligent. They were born from your specific, analytical mind. And no quirkless boy could suddenly manifest a power of that magnitude without an external catalyst. It's the only explanation, however fantastical, that fits the facts. He let out a long sigh, a mix of wonder and weariness. It seems the universe is far larger and stranger than even I imagined. He looked at Izuku, a new, profound understanding in his gaze. You have been given a great power, and with it, a great burden. A secret you must carry. In that, we are the same. Before Izuku could ask what he meant, All Might gestured to himself. You deserve to know why I am in this state. You've seen my true form. You deserve to know why. He lifted the side of his t-shirt. Izuku gasped. The left side of Tashinori's torso was a horrific, ruinous scar. It was a deep, crater-like vortex of mangled tissue, a sunburst of puckered skin and surgical marks that spoke of an injury so catastrophic it was a miracle the man was even alive. Pretty nasty, right? All Might said with a grim chuckle. I got this in a fight 5 years ago. My arch-nemesis. The fight was never made public. I defeated him, but not before he did this to me. It destroyed half of my respiratory system and shattered my stomach. I've had countless surgeries, but the damage is permanent. This is why I can only be a hero for about 3 hours a day. The rest of the time I'm this. Izuku stared, his mind connecting the dots. The 5-year-old battle. The sudden decrease in All Might's public appearances. It all made a terrible, tragic sense. The power I use, Toshinori continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, is not a simple strength quirk. It is a sacred torch, passed from one generation to the next. It is called One for All. The name landed in the alley with the weight of history. It is a stockpiling quirk, he explained. It stores power and can be passed on to others, growing stronger with each new user. It is a crystallization of power, a force for good created to fight a great evil. I am the 8th user of One for All. He looked at Izuku, his eyes filled with a shared burden. I came to this city looking for a successor. Someone to become the 9th user. The next symbol of peace. Izuku's mind reeled. His idol, the unshakable pillar of society, was not invincible. He was wounded, running on borrowed time, carrying a legacy just as cosmic and strange as the one that now sat on Izuku's own finger. On that rooftop, All Might confessed, his voice thick with regret. When I told you to be realistic, I was looking at you through the lens of my own fallibility. I saw a frail, quirkless boy, and I projected my own fears onto you. But then, I saw you save that young man. Without a quirk, without a promise of reward. You moved before anyone else. And I knew you were worthy. He paused. My plan was to offer you my power. To make you the next user of One for All. Izuku's jaw dropped. The air left his lungs. Him? The successor to All Might? It was a possibility so grand, so far beyond the scope of his wildest dreams, that his brain simply refused to process it. But now, All Might said, looking at the green ring. Now, fate has intervened. It has given you a power of your own, a power that is uniquely yours, tied not to the strength of others, but to the strength of your own spirit. To give you One for All now would be redundant. Perhaps even dangerous. Who knows how two such immense forces would interact in one body? He placed a thin but surprisingly strong hand on Izuku's shoulder. So, I cannot give you my quirk, young Midoriya. But I can give you something else. I can give you my experience. My guidance. That ring may have chosen you, but it cannot teach you what it means to be a symbol for the people of Earth. It cannot teach you how to smile in the face of despair to give others hope. It cannot teach you the intricacies of hero society in Japan. But I can. Toshinori Yagi smiled, and for the first time, Izuku saw the true strength of All Might not in his muscles, but in his unwavering spirit. The universe has made you a Green Lantern. Let me help you become a hero. Tears streamed freely down Izuku's face, mixing with the rain. They weren't tears of sadness or despair. They were tears of overwhelming, world-altering joy. He nodded furiously, unable to form words, and bowed his head in a gesture of profound gratitude. Good, Toshinori said, his smile widening. Then our first lesson begins now. Your ring gave you power, but I suspect it needs a source. Sir said his was failing. We need to ensure yours does not. Izuku's head shot up. The ring's voice echoed in his memory. Energy is finite. He looked at his hand. The ring's glow was noticeably dimmer than it had been. A new kind of anxiety, a resource management anxiety, began to bubble up. The ring, it said it needs to be charged. And how is that done? I think I know, Izuku said, concentrating. The ring fed him a schematic, an image of a familiar object. There's a battery. A power battery. It should be with Sir's body, in the wreckage. Then we have no time to waste, All Might declared. Let's go. An hour later, a discreet taxi pulled up a block away from the cordoned-off section of Dagoba Beach. The ride had been a quiet one, a comfortable silence settling between the skeletal man and the wide-eyed boy. Izuku's mind was still trying to process the sheer magnitude of the day's revelations. All Might's secret. one for all. And now, this shared mission. It felt like a dream. The crash site was now an official scene. Yellow police tape formed a wide perimeter, and a couple of patrol cars sat with their lights off, officers keeping a lazy watch. The eerie green glow was gone, leaving the junkyard in near total darkness, illuminated only by the distant city lights. "Stay here," Tashinori instructed, pulling the collar of his jacket up. "I'll create a distraction." Before Izuku could protest, the hero slipped into a side alley. A moment later, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the police perimeter, followed by what sounded like a dozen cats getting into a fight. The two officers, startled, grabbed their flashlights and jogged off to investigate. "Now, my boy! Go!" All Might's whisper came from the shadows. Izuku didn't hesitate. He ducked under the police tape and sprinted across the sand, his heart pounding. He slid down into the crater, the air still thick with that strange, ozonic smell. Abin-Sur's ship was a black, dead thing in the darkness. His body was still in the cockpit, still and peaceful. Izuku averted his eyes, murmuring a quiet prayer of thanks. He held up his hand, focusing. "Where is it?" he whispered to the ring. A thin, focused beam of green light shot out from the ring, acting like a pointer. It sliced through the darkness and illuminated a section of the ship's mangled hull that had been peeled back during the crash. Tucked away in a hidden compartment, miraculously undamaged, was an object that looked like an old-fashioned lantern. It was crafted from the same gleaming obsidian as the ship, with intricate, silver-like filigree tracing its surface. It was heavier than it looked, cool to the touch. The glass-like front was dark, but as Izuku brought his ring hand close, the lantern's core began to pulse with a faint, sympathetic green light, like a heart waiting to be restarted. This was the power battery. He lifted it carefully from its alcove, cradling it in his arms. It hummed with a deep, resonant energy. The ring on his finger pulsed faster, eagerly. The oath, the ring's voice instructed in his mind. "You must recite the oath. Speak the words of the core. They will unlock the power." Words flooded his mind, ancient and powerful, imbued with the will of countless predecessors. Izuku straightened up, standing in the center of the crater, the silent form of Abin-Sur his only witness. He held the lantern aloft in his left hand and brought his right hand, the ring, up to it. He took a deep breath. He was just a boy. A hero nerd from Yuzurifu. Who was he to speak such words, to claim such a legacy? The weight of it felt immense, crushing. But then he remembered All Might's belief in him. He remembered Abin-Sur's sacrifice. He remembered Kaken's terrified eyes. His will, once a flickering candle, solidified into a column of steel. His voice was shaky at first, a timid whisper in the night. In brightest day, in blackest night, he felt a connection, a faint thread of energy linking his ring to the battery. The lantern began to glow more brightly. He took another breath, his voice growing stronger, more confident, as he embraced the meaning of the words. "No evil shall escape my sight." The light intensified, pouring from the lantern, bathing the crater in a brilliant emerald aurora. The power wasn't just flowing into the ring. It was flowing through him. He felt the collective will of thousands of beings across millions of years, a chorus of voices shouting their defiance against the darkness. He straightened his back, his voice no longer shaking, but ringing with a conviction he had never known he possessed. He wasn't just repeating words, he was making a vow. "Let those who worship evil's might." The energy surged, a tidal wave of pure, concentrated willpower. The ring on his finger blazed, and the symbol on the battery flared to life. He felt it, a deep, resonant connection to every green lantern, past and present. He was part of something vast, ancient, and noble. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for a decade was washed away, replaced by a sense of belonging that was as infinite as the stars. He shouted the final line, his voice echoing across the beach, a declaration of intent to the entire universe. "Beware my power, green lantern's light!" The power battery erupted in a silent, blinding flash of emerald light, a miniature supernova of pure will. The ring's charge slammed to 100%, and the uniform of light reformed around him, more solid and vibrant than before. He felt incredible, brimming with an energy that was both cosmic and deeply personal. He was full. He was whole. He was a green lantern. The next 10 months were a blur of sweat, frustration, and breathtaking discovery. The sun-drenched, trash-filled expanse of Dagoba Beach became Izuku's private training ground, his sanctuary, and his classroom. And his teacher was the unlikeliest mentor in the world, a gaunt, coughing man who held the spirit of the world's greatest hero. The initial plan, born from Izuku's hero-worshipping mind, was simple. All Might was the greatest. Therefore, to be a great hero, he should be like All Might. This plan failed spectacularly. "Okay, young Midoriya," Toshinori called out, bundled in a heavy coat despite the warm sun. "A villain is charging. You need to stop him with overwhelming force. Show me a smash." Izuku nodded, his expression determined. He pictured All Might's fist, a symbol of absolute power. He poured his will into the ring, visualizing a gigantic green fist, ready to pulverize a mountain of junked cars. The construct that formed was pathetic. It was a massive, shimmering, translucent green blob, vaguely fist-shaped, that wobbled in the air like unset gelatin. It drifted slowly toward the car pile and impacted with a gentle, squishing sound before dissolving into a shower of embarrassed-looking sparks. Toshinori sighed, a plume of steam escaping his lips. Again, they tried for weeks. Izuku attempted to make giant fists, massive legs for a Texas smash kick, and even a whole-body construct of All Might. Every attempt was a failure. The constructs were always amorphous, unstable, and weak, flickering out of existence if he didn't concentrate with all his might. The raw power was there. He could feel it, a raging sea inside him, but he couldn't give it proper shape. "I don't understand," Izuku mumbled one afternoon, slumping to the ground in exhaustion, the ring's charge down to 40%. "I'm picturing it perfectly. I'm willing it to be strong. Why won't it work?" Toshinori walked over, his expression thoughtful. He wasn't a teacher by nature, and his own power was so instinctual that explaining it was nearly impossible. But he was a master observer. He had been watching Izuku, not just his constructs, but the boy himself. He'd seen him muttering to himself, scribbling furiously in a new notebook, ring construct analysis for the future, his mind always moving, always analyzing. "Young Midoriya," he said, tapping the cover of the boy's notebook. "What is my power? It's one for all. A quirk that stockpiles immense strength and—" No, Toshinori interrupted gently. "At its core. What is it? It's a punch. It's direct. It's simple. It is the application of overwhelming kinetic force to a single point. My will is as simple as my power. Hit the bad guy, save the day." He then pointed at Izuku. "You are not simple, my boy. Your mind is a beautiful, intricate, chaotic machine. You're trying to use a scalpel to hammer a nail. You are trying to be me." Toshinori knelt, his gaze serious. "Stop trying to be me. The ring doesn't build what I would build. It builds what you can imagine in detail. Your power isn't in your fists, my boy. It's in here." He tapped Izuku's forehead. "And in here." He tapped the notebook again. "Be you." It was a revelation. It was a key turning a lock in Izuku's mind. He had spent his whole life compensating for his lack of physical power with his mind. He thought the ring, a source of ultimate power, meant he could finally abandon that part of himself and just be strong. All Might had just told him the opposite. His analytical nature wasn't a crutch anymore. With the ring, it was his greatest weapon. The training shifted. There were no more giant, wobbly fists. The next day, Toshinori watched in amazement as Izuku, instead of trying to smash a pile of refrigerators, pointed his ring at it, and created a fleet of 100 tiny, buzzing construction drones. Each one was a perfect, intricate construct of whirring gears and tiny grappling claws. They descended on the pile, working in perfect unison to dismantle it, sort the metal from the plastic, and stack the components in neat, orderly piles. It was slow, precise, and utterly brilliant. From that day on, his progress was exponential. He abandoned imitation and embraced innovation. His constructs became a reflection of his own obsessive, analytical mind. He practiced rescue. He created a full-body medical scanner that passed over a training dummy, its green light highlighting detailed anatomical charts of simulated injuries. He then formed delicate, spider-like surgical forceps and splints of solid light to stabilize the dummy, his brow furrowed in concentration. He practiced defense. He stopped making simple walls and started creating multi-layered, reactive shields. The outer layer was a kinetic dampener designed to absorb punches, while the inner layer was a crystalline structure he designed to refract and dissipate energy attacks. He practiced combat. He created a perfect, glowing replica of Eraserhead's capture weapon, practicing manipulating its dozens of metallic strands to ensnare targets without hurting them. He designed and manifested complex Rube Goldberg-esque traps that used an enemy's own momentum against them. His favorite construct became a sleek, futuristic sniper rifle. He would fly a kilometer up and practice firing bolts of focused, non-lethal concussive energy to hit a single soda can balanced on a pole. All Might's role shifted as well. He could no longer advise on technique, as Izuku was now in a world entirely his own. Instead, he became the mentor for everything else. A hero must be reassuring, he'd call out as Izuku meticulously assembled a crane construct to lift a bus chassis. Smile, young Midoriya. Even when you're concentrating, the people need to see that you are in control, that everything will be alright. Izuku would try, and the resulting grimace of pained concentration was so comical that it made Toshinori bark out a laugh. But he kept practicing. The 10 months flew by. The beach, once a mountain of forgotten scrap, was now a pristine, sandy shoreline. Izuku had not just hauled the trash away, he had analyzed, sorted, and contained it with a million different constructs, cleaning the landscape as he honed his power. His body, once frail, had become lean and strong from the physical and mental exertion. He was still quiet and polite, but the nervous, hunched-over posture was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. He stood taller. On the morning of the UA entrance exam, he stood with Toshinori on the now beautiful beach, watching the sunrise. "You did it, my boy," Toshinori said, his voice thick with pride. "You cleaned this entire beach. You mastered a power beyond my comprehension. You are ready." Izuku looked at his hand, clenching it into a fist. The ring gave a familiar, comforting pulse. He thought of the boy who had knelt on this very beach 10 months ago, ready to give up on everything. He was a different person now. "Thank you, All Might," Izuku said, his voice firm. "For everything. For believing in me when no one else would. For showing me how to be myself." "You earned it," Toshinori said, giving him a firm clap on the shoulder. "Now go. Go and show them what you can do. Your story is just beginning." Izuku nodded. He turned and walked away from the beach, away from his mentor, and toward the future. He walked through the city streets, his new, crisp school uniform feeling strange after months in workout clothes. He arrived at the towering gates of UA. High, a monument to the world of heroes he had always dreamed of joining. Other applicants buzzed around him, chattering excitedly about their quirks, their strategies, their confidence. The old Izuku would have shrunk into himself, intimidated and invisible. But today, he felt a calm, steady power humming within him. He wasn't here with a borrowed quirk he was terrified to use, a power that threatened to shatter his bones. He was here with a power that was a perfect extension of his own mind, his own heart, his own indomitable will. He looked up at the giant UA building, a small smile touching his lips. It was the confident, reassuring smile All Might had taught him to wear. He was Izuku Midoriya. And he had a universe to show them. The air in the UA High briefing hall crackled with a nervous energy so thick it was almost tangible. Izuku Midoriya sat amidst a sea of teenagers, each one a bundle of carefully honed power and ambition. He could practically see the quirks shimmering around them, a girl with what looked like vines for hair, a boy whose skin had a metallic sheen, another who was subtly vibrating in his seat. The old Izuku would have been a singularity of anxiety in this room, a quirkless black hole shrinking under the weight of his own inadequacy. But as he sat there, his back straight, his hands resting calmly on his knees, he felt a quiet hum. It wasn't the thrum of the auditorium's ventilation system. It was the soft, steady pulse of the ring on his finger, a silent partner hidden beneath his tracksuit sleeve. It was a constant, comforting reminder that he was no longer an empty vessel. He was a weapon, a fortress, a creator. He was ready. His gaze drifted across the room and landed, inevitably, on Katsuki Bakugo. Kaken was leaning back in his seat, a picture of arrogant confidence, a smirk playing on his lips as he sized up the competition and found them all wanting. For a brief second, his crimson eyes met Izuku's. The smirk vanished, replaced by a flash of contemptuous confusion. It was the same look he'd been giving Izuku for months, ever since the sludge villain incident, a look that said, "You shouldn't even be here. What trick are you playing, Deku?" Izuku simply met his gaze, held it for a moment, and then calmly looked away, focusing on the stage. The lack of a flinch seemed to infuriate Bakugo more than any retort could have. Nearby, a tall, broad-shouldered young man with dark blue hair and glasses chopped his hand through the air, muttering about the exam pamphlet's apparent lack of clarity. A moment later, a girl with a round, cheerful face and rosy cheeks caught Izuku's eye and gave him a small, nervous smile, which he returned with a genuine one of his own. It was the girl from the school gates. Her warmth was a small island of calm in the churning sea of pre-exam jitters. "All right, examinee listeners, welcome to today's live performance," the booming voice of the pro hero present mic blasted from the stage, shaking Izuku from his reverie. The hero, clad in leather and sporting his signature gravity-defying blonde hair, struck a pose. "Everybody say hey." Silence. A cricket could have chirped, and it would have sounded like a rock concert. "Tough crowd," Present Mike muttered, before launching into the explanation. "Like your application said, you rockin' recruits will be conducting 10-minute mock battles in super hip urban settings. You can bring whatever you want with you. After the presentation, you'll head to your specified battle center. Sound good?" More silence. Izuku scanned his information card. Battle Center B. He looked over at Bakugo's card. Battle Center A. A small measure of relief washed over him. At least he wouldn't have to deal with Kaken's explosive temper during the test. Present Mike pointed a finger at the massive screen behind him. "We've got 3 types of foe villains stationed in each battle center. You earn points for each of them based on their difficulty. Your goal, my little listeners, is to use your quirks to rack up a heroic score. But remember, kicking butt isn't the only way to be a hero. Attacking other examinees is a big no, you dig?" As Present Mike continued, the boy with the glasses shot to his feet, his hand raised ramrod straight. "Excuse me, sir, I have a question." "Hit me." "On the printout, there are 4 types of villains listed. If this is a misprint, it is a great shame upon this esteemed institution," he declared, his voice ringing with indignation. He then spun around and pointed a rigid finger directly at Izuku. "And you, with the curly hair. You have been muttering and fidgeting this entire time. It is distracting. If you are not taking this seriously, then you should leave." A few heads turned to look at Izuku. He felt a familiar flush of embarrassment creep up his neck, a phantom limb of his old self. But before he could stammer an apology, Present Mike intervened. All right, examinee 7111, thanks for the call in. The 4th villain type is the 0-pointer. He's worth, you guessed it, 0 points. Think of him as an obstacle, a gimmick to be avoided. Now everyone, prepare to be tested. As our school motto says, Plus Ultra. Good luck. The bus ride to Battle Center B was a tense affair. Izuku found a seat by himself, closing his eyes and focusing on his breathing, running through the lessons All Might had drilled into him. Don't just think about power, young Midoriya. Think about purpose. What kind of hero do you want to be? Every action you take today will be an answer to that question. He wanted to be a hero who saved people. That was his purpose. Smashing robots was secondary. He recalled the exam breakdown, villain points for destruction, and a secret category, rescue points for heroic acts. That would be his focus. The bus shuddered to a halt. The doors hissed open, revealing a breathtaking sight. Battle Center B was a sprawling, artificial city, a concrete jungle of towering skyscrapers, residential blocks, and winding streets, all enclosed within a massive wall. It was a hero's playground. The other applicants spilled out of the bus, stretching and activating their quirks. A boy cracked his knuckles, and they turned to solid rock. A girl's eyes glowed, and a small bird made of pink energy flew from her shoulder. Izuku saw the bubbly girl from the briefing hall. She was hopping from foot to foot, slapping her cheeks. Okay, you can do this. she chanted to herself. Izuku took a deep breath, the scent of ozone and steel filling his lungs. He could feel the familiar coil of fear in his stomach, the performance anxiety that came with knowing the eyes of UA's greatest heroes were upon him. But beneath it was a bedrock of resolve, 10 months of training forged in will and starlight. He clenched his right fist, and the ring gave a faint, reassuring pulse. Atop a massive watchtower, President Mick's voice echoed across the cityscape. Ayan! Begin! The massive gates in front of them began to groan open. What's wrong? The test started! Run! Run! The die is cast! For a heartbeat, everyone was frozen in confusion. Then, the dam broke. A wave of teenagers surged forward, a chaotic stampede of quirks and ambition. The boy with engine legs, the same one who had scolded Izuku, shot past everyone else, a blur of motion. But Izuku didn't run. He stood still for a second, a small, calm island in the rushing river of bodies. He didn't need to jostle for position. He wasn't bound by the pavement. He lifted his right hand. The ring flared to life, an emerald beacon in the morning sun, a sleek, translucent green disk, 2 meters in diameter and glowing with a soft internal light, materialized at his feet with a soft vroom. He stepped onto it, the surface solid and unyielding. With a focused thought, he shot skyward, ascending 100 feet in a smooth, controlled spiral, leaving the frantic scramble of the crowd far below. What the? A flight quirk? Someone shouted from the ground. From his new vantage point, the entire battle center was laid out before him like a map. He could see the swarm of examinees funneling into the main thoroughfare, and he could see the robots, emerging from side alleys to meet them. His analytical mind went into overdrive, processing the scene not as a fight, an arena, but as a crisis zone. Okay, he muttered, his voice a low hum of concentration. Primary clusters of one-pointers engaging the main group. Collateral damage risk is high, several smaller groups of two-pointers flanking from the west. Isolated examinees are at risk of being overwhelmed. Objective, crowd control and targeted neutralization, minimize risk, maximize rescue potential. He banked his flight disc and shot off toward the nearest point of conflict. Below him, a group of 5 students was being pinned down by a squadron of one-pointers. The robots were squat, scorpion-like machines that scurried on 6 legs and fired small energy pellets from their tails. The students were holding them off, but they were disorganized, their quirks clashing and getting in each other's way. A boy shooting lasers from his fingers nearly hit a girl who could stretch her limbs like rubber. Inefficient. Dangerous. Izuku descended, hovering 30 feet above them. Hey! Get ready! He yelled. They looked up, their faces a mixture of confusion and awe. Izuku thrust both hands forward, palms open. He didn't imagine a weapon. He imagined a tool. He pictured the intricate weave of a spider's web, reinforced with the tensile strength of carbon nanotubes and coated with an industrial-grade adhesive he'd once seen in a support item documentary. A massive net of shimmering green energy erupted from his hands. It wasn't a simple grid. It was a complex, beautiful lacework of glowing threads that spread out to cover the entire street. It fell upon the one-pointers, and the moment it made contact, it contracted. The sticky energy strands wrapped around the robots' limbs and weapons, silencing their energy pellets and gumming up their joints. In seconds, the entire squadron of a dozen robots was ensnared, struggling uselessly in a giant, glowing cocoon. A cascade of notifications pinged in his mind, the ring's system interface confirming the kills. Villain points acquired, 12. The 5 students below stared, their jaws hanging open. Izuku gave them a quick, reassuring smile, the one All Might had made him practice 1,000 times. Work together! Watch each other's backs, he called out, before his disc shot off again, leaving them in stunned silence. He spent the next few minutes soaring through the city, a one-man support team. He wasn't hunting for points, he was hunting for problems to solve. He saw a boy with a rock armor quirk smashing a two-pointer, sending shrapnel flying toward a smaller, terrified-looking examinee hiding behind a car. Izuku zipped between them, and a hexagonal shield of emerald light, a perfect copy of the one he practiced with on the beach, materialized to absorb the impact. Rescue points acquired, 10. He saw the bubbly girl, Ochako Uraraka, floating a 3-pointer high into the air. But as she released it, she stumbled, a wave of nausea, the drawback of her quirk, making her clutch her stomach. A second robot, a two-pointer with whirling blades for arms, advanced on her while she was vulnerable. Izuku was there in an instant. He didn't attack the robot. He focused on the rescue. A small, glowing green platform scooped Uraraka up, lifting her out of harm's way just as the robot's blades sliced through the air where she'd been. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. She looked up at him, her brown eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "I think so." "Wow. Thank you, be careful," he said with another All Might smile, before depositing her gently on a safe rooftop and speeding away. Rescue points acquired 15. His strategy was working. He was accumulating a steady, if not spectacular, number of villain points, but his internal tally of rescue points was climbing rapidly. This was what it meant to be a hero. It wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure no one else lost. He found a high perch atop one of the central skyscrapers, giving him a commanding view of the entire area. He needed to be more efficient. Flying from crisis to crisis was good, but proactive intervention was better. He knelt, resting one knee on his disc, and held out his right hand. The air in front of him shimmered. A new construct began to form, not out of brute force, but with the meticulous precision of a master watchmaker. Light condensed and solidified into a long, sleek rifle, its stock and barrel made of polished, dark green energy, with a glowing, intricate scope that hummed with power. It was the sniper rifle he had designed and perfected on the beach. He lifted the rifle, the construct feeling perfectly balanced and familiar in his hands. He peered through the scope. The lens was a marvel, a product of his own imagination. It could zoom in on targets kilometers away, display their structural weak points in a red overlay, and calculate trajectory based on wind speed. It was Hero Analysis Notebook number 13 brought to life. He spotted a lone two-pointer menacing a student down a narrow alley. He didn't fire a destructive blast. He took a breath, his will calm and focused, and pulled the trigger. A thin, needle-like beam of concussive green energy shot across the city. It struck the robot's leg joint with a sharp crack. The robot stumbled and collapsed, disabled but not destroyed. Villain points acquired. 2. For the next 2 minutes, he was a guardian angel, a silent, emerald protector. He disabled robots from afar with surgical precision, creating openings for other students to score points, preventing ambushes, and neutralizing threats before they could even materialize. He was a force multiplier, his influence spreading across the entire battlefield. In a darkened observation room deep within UA's main building, a bank of monitors displayed feeds from every battle center. The faculty of UA watched the next generation of heroes in action. "That Bakugo kid in Center A has a powerful quirk," commented the R-rated hero Midnight, gesturing to a screen showing a series of massive explosions. "But his attitude is severely lacking. Zero consideration for his surroundings." Humph. Shota Aizawa, Eraserhead, grunted from his slouching position. "Attitude can be disciplined. Raw power is what gets you through the door." His gaze, however, was fixed on a different set of monitors, the ones for Battle Center B. "What about that one?" All eyes turned to the screens showing Izuku. They saw him on his disc, soaring above the fray. They watched the replay of the giant net construct, followed by the shields and platforms. Now, they watched in fascination as he picked off robots from a kilometer away with his rifle construct. "Whoa, check out that little listener!" President Mike shouted, leaning forward. "That's some kind of creation quirk, but the versatility is off the charts. 1 second he's making nets, the next he's a long-range sniper." "That's crazy." Aizawa's eyes narrowed, his analytical mind trying and failing to categorize the power. "It's not a standard emitter or transformation quirk. The constructs are too complex, too varied. To manifest such detailed and functional objects requires an incredible mental capacity and energy source. Look at the rifle. It's not just a tube that shoots light. It's a fully realized mechanism, and he's switching between wildly different constructs with no apparent cooldown or drawback. It's illogical." A small, furry paw lifted a teacup. "Indeed," said Principal Nizu, his black eyes gleaming with an intelligence that far surpassed any normal animal. He had been watching the green-haired boy with an unnerving, delighted focus. His point totals are unusual, a modest 32 villain points, but our provisional rescue point count for him is already over 60, the highest in any battle center by a wide margin. Niza took a sip of his tea, a wide, knowing grin spreading across his face. He is not acting like an applicant trying to pass a test. He is acting like a hero already on the job. He is prioritizing protection, support, and strategic neutralization over personal glory. But the quirk itself? Aizawa pressed, unable to let it go. There's no record of anything like it. Niza set his teacup down with a soft click. His grin widened. That, my dear Aizawa, he said, his voice full of delighted mystery, is because I do not believe that is a quirk at all. The other teachers stared at him. Watch him, Nizu instructed, his gaze returning to the monitor. We are witnessing something new. That is not a quirk. That is a phenomenon. As if on cue, the ground in every battle center began to shake. The skyscraper Izuku was perched on trembled violently. A deep, grinding roar echoed from the city's center, a sound of stressed metal and immense power. The rifle construct in his hands dissolved as his concentration was broken. He shot to his feet, his disc wobbling. All across the city, the other applicants were stopping, looking around in terror. The ground shook again, more violently this time, and with a deafening screech of tearing steel, a building in the central plaza collapsed inward. From the dust and rubble, something rose, and rose, and rose. It was the zero-pointer. But the briefing had not done it justice. It wasn't a robot, it was a mobile skyscraper, a kaiju of chrome and wires that towered over the entire city. Its massive head, filled with glowing red sensor eyes, scraped the clouds. Its fists were the size of buses. Every step it took was a miniature earthquake. Panic, primal and absolute, erupted. Run! It's the zero-pointer! Get away! The organized chaos of the exam devolved into a stampede of pure terror. Everyone, without exception, turned and fled. It was the only logical response. The robot was an obstacle, worth 0 points. Engaging it was pointless and suicidal. Izuku's own instincts screamed at him to fly away, to get as far from the mechanical monstrosity as possible. His disc was already turning, but as he prepared to flee, a small, pained cry from below caught his attention. He looked down. In the street directly in the path of the zero-pointer was Uraraka. A chunk of debris from a collapsing building had pinned her leg. She was struggling, her face pale with pain and fear, but she couldn't get free. The robot's massive foot, large enough to crush the entire block, was lifting for its next step. Time slowed down. The fleeing students. The crying girl. The descending foot of the giant robot. What kind of hero do you want to be? All Might's voice in his head. The ring chose one with the ability to overcome great fear. Abin Sur's dying words. The fear was a physical thing, a mountain of ice in his chest. But the image of Uraraka's terrified face was a fire that started to melt it. He could save himself. Or he could save her. There was no third option. It wasn't even a choice. The flight disc shot forward, not away from the danger, but directly toward it. He flew straight at the zero-pointer, a tiny green firefly challenging a steel god. I'm not trying to fight you, he yelled, though no one could hear him. I'm just going to stop you. His mind, a supercomputer of heroic analysis, went into overdrive. A punch wouldn't work. A laser wouldn't scratch it. He couldn't match its power. So he had to use its own power against it. He needed a machine to unmake a machine. He needed leverage, physics, and an insane amount of will. He held out both hands, the ring on his right finger blazing with a light so intense it was nearly white at its core. Now, he roared, pouring every ounce of his concentration, his training, his desperate need to save her, into his constructs. It started with the anchors. Massive, glowing green hooks, each the size of a car, materialized from thin air and slammed into the sides of the sturdy buildings flanking the street, digging deep into the reinforced concrete with a shriek of tortured metal. Then came the chains. From the anchors, colossal chains of solid light, their links as thick as tree trunks, shot out. They weren't just chains. They were complex mechanisms, wrapping around the zero-pointer's rising leg, snaking up its torso, tethering it to the buildings. But that was just the scaffolding. The real work began now. In the space between the robot and the buildings, a machine of impossible complexity began to construct itself from pure light. Gigantic gears, dozens of meters in diameter, meshed together with a low, grinding hum. Massive levers of solid energy pivoted on glowing fulcrums. A system of pulleys and counterweights, all rendered in breathtaking, translucent emerald, snapped into place. It was the physical manifestation of a physics textbook, a cathedral of kinetic engineering built in seconds. The zero-pointer tried to complete its step, putting its full weight and power into the motion. But now, it wasn't just lifting its own leg. It was fighting against Izuku's machine. Brilliant! The giant light gears began to turn, groaning under the immense strain. The chains pulled taut, humming with tension. The machine was doing exactly what Izuku had designed it to do. It was redirecting the robot's own kinetic energy. The force of its step was being channeled through the gears and levers, not to stop it, but to unbalance it. The robot's leg was pulled sideways. Its center of gravity, already precarious, shifted catastrophically. The zero-pointer tilted, its colossal frame leaning like a dying tree. Its arms flailed, smashing into buildings as it tried to right itself. But Izuku wasn't done. As the robot began to fall backward, a new series of constructs appeared. Giant, rotating saw blades of green energy materialized along the chains, biting into the robot's joints. Diamond-hard drills of pure will emerged from the ground, boring into its ankles. The machine wasn't just toppling the robot, it was systematically dismantling it as it fell. With a final, deafening groan that echoed across the city, the zero-pointer crashed to the ground, landing in a heap of shattered metal and severed wires, its red eyes flickering and dying. The silence that followed was absolute. Izuku hung in the air for a moment, his chest heaving, his body trembling with exhaustion. The massive, intricate machine of light held its form for a few seconds, a testament to his impossible feat, then dissolved into a billion motes of green light that drifted down like snow. His flight disk flickered and vanished. He fell the last 20 feet, landing in a clumsy heap on the pavement, the last of his strength gone. His uniform of light sputtered and died, leaving him in his simple tracksuit. He pushed himself up, his head throbbing, his body screaming in protest. He had done it. He had saved her. He looked over and saw Uraraka, now free, staring at him, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't begin to comprehend. Then he became aware of the other eyes. Every applicant who had fled had stopped. They were all standing at the edges of the plaza, staring at the wreckage of the undefeatable robot, staring at the small, curly-haired boy who had brought it down not with a punch, but with an idea. Ida Tenya stood frozen, his mouth agape, his rigid, by-the-book worldview completely shattered. How could an act of such reckless, illogical heroism be so effective? So right? Uraraka could only whisper one word. Incredible! Time's up! President Mick's voice boomed, signaling the end of the exam. Izuku's adrenaline faded, and the true weight of his exhaustion slammed into him. He collapsed to his knees, panting. He had no idea if he'd passed. He'd barely gotten any villain points compared to the others, but as he looked at the safe and sound Uraraka, he knew he wouldn't have done a single thing differently. He heard heavy, angry footsteps approaching. He looked up to see Katsuki Bakugo storming toward him, his face a thunderous mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He had clearly finished his exam in Center A and come to find out what the commotion was. He had seen everything. Bakugo grabbed Izuku by the front of his tracksuit, hauling him to his feet. "What the hell was that, Deku?" he snarled, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Spittle flew from his lips. His eyes were wide with a furious, terrified confusion. This was impossible. This broke every rule of the world he knew. That wasn't a party trick. That wasn't a lucky break. That was real power. Bakugo's grip tightened, his knuckles white. The question he asked wasn't just a question. It was an accusation, an indictment of reality itself. "Where?" he spat, his face inches from Izuku's. "Did a quirkless, useless loser like you get that kind of power?" The acceptance letter had been a tangible object of miracles. Not a projection, but a small, disc-shaped device that had displayed a hologram of All Might himself, booming with pride. Young Midoriya, I am here. As a hologram. You passed with flying colors. You broke the scoring record for villain points, yes, but more importantly, you earned the highest rescue points score in the history of this exam. Your actions embodied the very spirit of heroism. Come, young Midoriya. This is your Hero Academy. Izuku had watched it 27 times, tears streaming down his face with each viewing, his mother weeping with joy behind him. It was real. After a lifetime of being on the outside looking in, the door had finally opened. And now, he stood before that door. Class 1A. It was ridiculously, absurdly large, a towering slab of wood and metal designed to accommodate the vast diversity of quirks Yui attracted. To Izuku, it felt like the gateway to a new world, a final, symbolic barrier between the boy he had been and the hero he was trying to become. He took a deep breath, the steady, comforting hum of the ring on his finger a silent companion. He could do this. He slid the massive door open and stepped inside. The classroom was already buzzing with a low murmur of conversation. He saw familiar faces from the exam. The boy with spiky red hair who could harden his skin, the girl with the headphone jacks hanging from her earlobes. And sitting with his feet propped disrespectfully on his desk was Katsuki Bakugo, his signature scowl firmly in place. Arguing with him was the tall, bespectacled boy from the orientation, Ida Tenya, his arms chopping the air with rigid precision. Remove your feet from the desk at once, Ida commanded. Such an act is an insult to our upperclassmen and the master craftsmen who built this furniture. Like I care, Bakugo sneered, not even bothering to look at him. What junior high you from, Four Eyes? I am from the prestigious semi-private academy. My name is Ida Tenya. Sama? Bakugo's sneer deepened. So you're a damn elite then. Looks like I'll have fun crushing you. Ida reeled back as if struck. Crushing? You would dare threaten a fellow student? Are you certain you are in the right place? Izuku felt a familiar pang of anxiety. He wanted to melt into the wall, to become invisible. But All Might's words echoed in his mind. A hero does not hide. He took a step forward, and Ida's head whipped around, his eyes locking onto Izuku. It's you! Ida declared, striding over with a speed that was almost alarming. Good morning. My name is Ida Tenya from Sumai. I heard, Izuku managed, a small, nervous smile on his face. I'm Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you, Ida-kun. Midoriya-kun, Ida said, his expression turning serious. I must apologize to you. During the entrance exam, I misjudged you completely. While I was focused solely on the nature of the test, you perceived its true purpose. The hidden criteria of rescue and heroic conduct. I was blinded by the literal rules, while you acted like a true hero. He bowed a full, formal 90 degrees. I was wrong. You are clearly my superior. Izuku waved his hands frantically. And no, please lift your head. I didn't. I just did what anyone would have done. His eyes flickered over to Bakugo. The blonde scowl had deepened into a thunderous glare. He wasn't looking at Ida. He was staring at Izuku, his crimson eyes burning with a mixture of hatred and baffled fury. He watched as Izuku, the useless, pebble-in-the-road Deku, was being praised, being treated as an equal, a superior, even. The world was tilting on its axis, and Bakugo clearly hated the sensation. Just then, a cheerful voice cut through the tension. Oh! It's you! The plain-looking boy. Izuku turned to see the bubbly girl from the exam, her round face beaming. You were amazing! That giant thing! With the gears and the chains. It was blah, and swoosh, and then kaboom! She made a series of enthusiastic, if not entirely accurate, gestures. I'm Uraraka Ochako. Thank you for saving me back there, Uraraka-san. It was nothing, really, Izuku stammered, a blush creeping up his neck. This was new territory. Talking to a girl who wasn't his mother. I was just glad you were okay. Your quirk is amazing, by the way. Making things weightless has so many applications for rescue and construction, though you have to be careful about the nausea drawback. Maybe some inner-ear stabilizing support gear could help, or perhaps controlled gravity training could increase your tolerance over time. He clapped a hand over his mouth, horrified. His muttering habit had kicked in. I'm so sorry, Uraraka just giggled, her eyes sparkling. Wow, you really think about this stuff, don't you? That's so cool. This simple, genuine compliment struck Izuku harder than any of Bakugo's explosions ever had. Cool? Him? He felt a warmth spread through his chest. Maybe he could actually make friends here. If you're here to be chummy, a tired, gravelly voice drawled from the floor, then you can pack up and leave. The trio turned. Lying on the floor behind the teacher's podium, zipped into a yellow sleeping bag, was a man with tired, bloodshot eyes and a mess of long, black hair. He looked like a homeless caterpillar. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, unzipping the bag and rising to his feet with a world-weary sigh. He was dressed in a black, loose-fitting jumpsuit with a strange, scarf-like capture weapon wrapped around his neck. Life is short. You're all too slow on the uptake. The class stared in collective, stunned silence. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota, he said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. Pleasure to meet you. He reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a clean, folded UA gym uniform. Put these on immediately. Then meet me on the P grounds. The P grounds were bathed in the morning sun, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. The students stood in a nervous line, clad in their new blue and white gym uniforms. A quirk apprehension test? Several students exclaimed in unison. But what about the entrance ceremony? The orientation? Uraraka asked, her brow furrowed with worry. If you're aiming to be a hero, you don't have time for frilly, pointless events, Aizawa said, his back to them. UA is known for its freestyle educational system. That applies to us teachers as well. He turned, his gaze sweeping over them, cold and analytical. You've been using your quirks since junior high, but you've been shackled by rules. No public quirk use. Standardized physical exams that don't account for your unique abilities. It's irrational. He gestured to the field. Here, you are free to use your quirks as you see fit. We will be conducting 8 physical tests to gauge your baseline potential. His eyes landed on Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the practical exam. What was your best softball throw in junior high? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa said, tossing him a softball. Do whatever you want, just stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the throwing circle, a predatory grin spreading across his face. He stretched his arms, small crackles of energy popping in his palms. He drew his arm back, and with a guttural roar, he threw the ball. Just as it left his hand, he unleashed a massive, focused explosion from his palm. Die! He screamed. The ball shot off like a rocket, propelled by the fiery blast, leaving a smoke trail in its wake. It sailed through the air, a tiny speck that finally landed far, far in the distance. Aizawa held up a small device. A number glowed on its screen. 705.2 meters. The class erupted in excited chatter. Whoa! 705 meters? This looks fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want. Aizawa's expression, which had been bored, suddenly turned cold and menacing. The air grew heavy. Fun, you say? His lips curled into a humorless smile, his eyes flashing with a dangerous light. So you think this is a game? You have 3 years here to become heroes. You think it's all going to be fun and games? His tone dropped, becoming deadly serious. Idiots. Today, you will learn that being a hero is not fun. It is pain. It is sacrifice. It is pushing yourself to the brink, and then going even further. His smile became a terrifying slash in his face. The student who scores last in total points will be judged to have 0 potential, and will be expelled on the spot. A wave of shock and terror rippled through the class. Expelled? But it's the first day. That's not fair. Uraraka cried out. Not fair? Aizawa's voice was like ice. Natural disasters are not fair. Catastrophic villain attacks are not fair. A quirk that turns you into a monster is not fair. The world is a chaotic, irrational place filled with unfairness. And it's a hero's job to fight it. If you're expecting a coddled school life, then you are in the wrong place. He swept his hand out. Welcome to UA High. This is Plus Ultra. Show me you deserve to be here. The mood had shifted completely. The fun was gone, replaced by a desperate, palpable fear. This was real. Their dreams were on the line. Aizawa's gaze drifted through the students, assessing, calculating. It landed on Izuku. He remembered the reports, Nise's cryptic words. He'd watched the footage of the zero-pointer takedown. It was an act of incredible power and suicidal recklessness. A flashy, irrational display. This boy, Midoriya, was a wild card. A potential problem student with a quirk so powerful it could level a city block by accident. He needed to be tested. He needed to be brought down to earth. Midoriya, Aizawa called out, his voice sharp. You're next for the ball throw. A hush fell over the class. All eyes turned to Izuku. This was the kid who had destroyed the giant robot. What was he going to do? Izuku walked into the circle, his heart pounding. Expulsion. The stakes were terrifyingly high. But a strange calm settled over him. This was just another problem to be solved. Objective, maximum throwing distance. He held the ball, feeling its weight. He could create a giant fist, but he knew from his training that it would be inefficient. He could create a cannon, but that was too simple. He needed something that reflected him. A system. A machine. He began to focus his will, the ring on his finger glowing with a soft emerald light. He envisioned a construct, a synthesis of organic power and mechanical precision. Aizawa watched, his expression grim. This is it. The big, flashy quirk. I'll let him start, then I'll erase it. When the power he relies on vanishes right before his eyes, he'll see what it's like to be powerless. He'll learn humility. It's a rational lesson. Try it now, Aizawa said, his voice laced with smug superiority. As Izuku drew his arm back, Aizawa's eyes flared a brilliant, menacing red. His long black hair floated up around his head, defying gravity. His capture weapon writhed like living snakes. It was the signature activation of his quirk, Erasure. The students gasped. It's Eraserhead, someone whispered. He can nullify any quirk just by looking at someone. Uraraka's hand flew to her mouth. Oh no! Midoriya-kun! Izuku felt a strange sensation, like a cold draft passing over him. But that was all. The steady, powerful hum of the ring didn't falter. The connection to the wellspring of willpower within him remained as strong as ever. He looked at Aizawa, confused for a split second, then a shocking realization dawned on him. He's trying to erase my power. And it's not working. Aizawa saw the brief flicker of confusion in the boy's eyes and smirked. Got him. But Izuku didn't falter. His confusion was replaced by a look of steely determination. He pivoted, his body moving with a practiced grace honed by months of training. He threw the ball, and as he did, his construct sprang to life. It was not a giant fist. It was a complex, beautiful machine of glowing green light. A massive, semi-organic arm, modeled after a star baseball pitcher's, formed around his own, but it was attached to a sophisticated catapult mechanism. Gears of solid light whirred, a thick, braided rope of energy pulled taut against the pivoting launch arm, and a gyroscope spun at its base, ensuring perfect stability. It was the product of hundreds of hours of analysis and imagination. The construct arm snapped forward with a sound like a thunderclap, transferring its momentum to Izuku's own throw at the moment of release. The ball wasn't just thrown, it was launched. It broke the sound barrier with a sharp crack, a tiny white bullet disappearing into the blue sky, leaving a vapor trail in its wake. The entire class was silent, their jaws slack with awe. Aizawa's jaw, however, had dropped for an entirely different reason. His eyes were still blazing red, his hair still floating. He was pouring his will into his erasure quirk, focusing it entirely on Midoriya. But the construct had appeared anyway. The power had worked. It was impossible. His quirk had never, ever failed before. He blinked. His hair fell. The red glow in his eyes faded. He stared at Izuku, his mind, for the first time in his professional career, completely blank with shock. He felt a sensation he hadn't experienced since he was a first-year student himself, the profound, terrifying feeling of being utterly out of his depth. The small device in his hand beeped. He looked down at it numbly. The screen displayed a single, glowing symbol, infinity. He couldn't speak. He just stared at the boy. Izuku, looking slightly embarrassed by the attention, rubbed the back of his neck. Aizawa-sensei? Izuku said, his voice quiet. Are you okay? You were looking at me really intensely. Aizawa finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled croak. My quirk, it didn't work. How? Izuku looked down at his hand, then back up at his teacher. He knew he had to explain, at least partially. He couldn't lie to a pro hero, to his teacher. It's not a quirk, he said, his voice just loud enough for the stunned class to hear. It's from my ring. Aizawa's eyes widened, his mind flashing back to Nisa's words. I do not believe that is a quirk at all. The rat was right. This changed everything. His greatest tool, the ultimate equalizer that had allowed him to face down villains with godlike powers, was completely, utterly useless against this one, soft-spoken boy. Aizawa Shota was, for all intents and purposes, quirkless in the face of whatever Izuku Midoriya was. A slow, terrifying grin began to spread across Aizawa's face. The smugness was gone. In its place was a look of pure, manic excitement. This irrational, impossible student had just become the most interesting puzzle he had ever encountered. I see, Aizawa said, his voice a low, dangerous purr. Let's continue. The rest of the tests were a masterclass in creative problem-solving. Izuku approached each challenge not with brute force, but with the mind of an engineer. 50-meter dash, Ida Tenya, using the engines in his calves, clocked in at an impressive 3.04 seconds. When it was Izuku's turn, he stood at the starting line, took a deep breath, and dissolved. His body broke apart into a swirling cloud of a million tiny, green motes of light, shot across the 50 meters in a silent, emerald streak, and reformed on the other side, perfectly whole. The timer clocked him at 0.03 seconds. Aizawa just stared, his grin widening. Grip strength. The class strongman, a boy with multiple arms named Shoji, recorded a powerful 540 kilograms. Izuku simply formed a construct around the dynamometer, a miniature, perfectly detailed hydraulic press made of green light. He didn't even strain as he mentally commanded it to clamp down. The device's digital display shot past its limit and simply read, error, sit-ups and stretches. While others powered through with their own physical stamina, Izuku created a sleek, form-fitting exoskeleton of light around his torso and legs. The construct moved him through the exercises with perfect, machine-like efficiency, ensuring zero wasted energy and flawless form. Throughout the tests, he was not an island. He noticed Uraraka struggling to clear the sandbox in the long jump. With a subtle flick of his finger, he created a small, solid, nearly invisible disk of hard light just under the sand where she was supposed to land, giving her a solid surface to bounce off and clear the pit easily. She shot him a wide, grateful smile. He saw the blonde boy with the navel laser, Oyama, clutching his stomach after each use of his quirk. During the side-to-side steps, Izuku, remembering his notes on support gear, discreetly formed a thin, glowing green belly band construct around Oyama's waist under his gym uniform, designed to provide gentle compression and support. Aoyama, his usual pained grimace replaced by a look of surprise, began to twinkle more brilliantly than ever. Merci, he whispered dramatically, a single, glittering tear rolling down his cheek. You have saved my sparkle. Watching all of this with cold, silent intensity was Todoroki Shoto. The boy with the heterochromatic eyes and the powerful ice quirk had dominated the tests with effortless, raw power, but he wasn't watching his competition. He was watching Midoriya. He saw not just the power, but the thought behind it. The precision. The compassion. His own power was a blunt instrument, a storm of fire and ice he wielded with disdain. Midoriya's was a symphony, each note played with purpose and control. This strange, quiet boy was a complete unknown, and Todoroki found the variable deeply, profoundly intriguing. And then there was Bakugo. With every incredible feat Izuku performed, with every person he helped, a new layer of fury was added to Bakugo's simmering rage. This wasn't the Deku he knew. The Deku he knew was a worthless, mumbling pebble to be kicked aside. This Deku was competent. He was creative. He was admired. He wasn't using brute strength, the currency of power. Bakugo understood. He was using his brain, the very thing Bakugo had always scorned him for. It was a personal, fundamental insult to his entire worldview. He spent the rest of the test grinding his teeth, his hands occasionally popping with furious, contained explosions. When the final scores were displayed, the result was inevitable. First, Midoriya Izuku. Second, Todoroki Shoto. Third, Bakugo Katsuki. 20th, Mineta Minoru. Ida was aghast that he hadn't even made the top 5. Bakugo stared at the board, his knuckles white, trembling with a rage so profound it was silent. And Izuku? Izuku just looked at his name at the top of the list and felt a quiet, simple sense of pride. He had done it his way. By the way, Aizawa said, his lazy drawl returning as he erased the scoreboard. The whole expulsion thing was a lie. The class froze. It was a rational deception, he explained with a shrug, designed to make you push yourselves beyond your limits. Way out? The class screamed except for a girl with a large black ponytail, who simply sighed and said, I thought as much. It was rather obvious. Aizawa handed out syllabi and dismissed them. As the students began to file back toward the locker rooms, buzzing with relief and excitement, he called out. Midoriya. A word. Izuku's blood ran cold. He walked over to his teacher, who was now regarding him with an unnervingly intense stare. I don't know what that ring is, Aizawa said, his voice low. And frankly, the specifics are above my pay grade. That's a problem for Nizu. But you need to understand something. He leaned in closer, his eyes boring into Izuku's. A power that cannot be negated, that has theoretically infinite potential, that is not bound by the biological limits of a quirk, that doesn't make you special. It makes you a target. Izuku felt a shiver run down his spine. Villains, governments, entities you can't even imagine. They will see you not as a hero, but as a weapon to be controlled or a threat to be eliminated, Aizawa continued, his voice grim. Your power is not a secret you can keep forever. And when it gets out, your life is going to get very, very complicated. The training here will not be enough. You need to be stronger, smarter, and more careful than everyone else, or you will be crushed. He straightened up, his expression unreadable. Don't get complacent. This was just the first day. He turned and walked away, leaving Izuku standing alone on the field, the weight of his teacher's words settling heavily on his shoulders. A bigger target. He looked down at the ring, the beautiful, powerful object that had given him everything. He was starting to understand that it came with a price. The next day, as Class 1A sat in their homeroom, Aizawa entered, looking as tired as ever. All right, settle down, he grumbled. Day's hero basic training will be a little different. You'll be supervised by myself, All Might, and one other teacher. He paused. We'll be taking a bus to a remote facility to conduct rescue training in various simulated disaster zones. A buzz of excitement went through the room. Rescue training. It was the most hero-like thing they would have done yet. Izuku felt a thrill of anticipation. This was his specialty. This was where he could truly shine. He was so focused on the possibilities, on the chance to prove himself, that he failed to register the cold premonition in his teacher's warning from the day before. He was so ready to face the simulated disasters ahead that he never once considered that a very real one was waiting for them just around the corner.